Very good, and look forward to the meeting. The one thing I did want to bring to your attention before we get started, January 1st is being on a Monday, and that means January 2nd is on a Tuesday.
Say it isn't so.
Yeah.
How did we get that changed?
What I was going to suggest is that we will not have a session of any type on the 2nd, but we will have our formal session on the 9th. If no one, okay, January 1st is a Monday, January 2nd being Tuesday. I was going to suggest that we do not have the formal session on the 2nd, that we move it to the 9th, and that we would cancel the 2nd as far as a meeting.
Well, only thing I do remember, just for one thing, and I'm indifferent, just to make sure we consciously go, we were originally going to have the public hearing before the vote, I thought, and we thought we were gonna get back to Airbnb. Was going to be the second, that would just push that out a little bit, or we could just have a public hearing and know what the business. I just wanna make sure you consciously knew what that was when we're looking at.
I'll ask, Dave and I talked about this, we double-checked to make sure we aren't going to have a negative impact on the public hearing for the Airbnb by doing what I just suggested. The problem, we're going to have a hard time getting everything put together because of the holidays.
I want to know, I'm fair, I just wanna make sure we consciously.
Okay, I'm going to try to make it work that we do not meet on the 2nd and that we
Like the sound.
have a formal session on the 9th. Okay, very good. We'll go ahead with the city manager's briefings.
Well,
Mr. City Manager, you're going to introduce the chief and Julie Hill.
Yes, sir. And Mayor, members of council, we're going to have a pretty video-intensive session today. So you're going to see a lot of work that's been put together by the media, by the communications department and VBTV's excellent crew. And to kind of kick us off, we've asked Chief Severa to join us today and to introduce an police academy video that is the trailer that has set into motion a series of episodes that are now showing on VBTV. And then I think Jim's going to talk a little bit about how this came about and then introduce Julie, whose team put this video together. And it's a pretty compelling marketing instrument as well.
Jim, we're glad to have you.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, members of council, thank you for having us. Kind of informally, I just want you to know that, as you know, I've said many, many times how easy it is to be the chief of police department in this city because things get done. And they get done by tremendous staff from across my organization, across the police department. Well, it also goes outside of the organization. I think we have a philosophy in our city that we do things, we get things accomplished. We don't have to go through a mile of bureaucracy and red tape in order to accomplish some of our goals. This is an example of that. Julie, Ms. Hill, came to me a while back and said we would like to put a videographer embedded in a police academy and run through the entire police academy, which, as we know, is 24 weeks long. One of the more intense police academies in the entire state. I've said many times that Fairfax is bigger than we are, but we're better. And have that videographer there from day one until graduation to show the evolution of a recruit from the first moment that they walk in until they walk across the stage as a police officer. So this is the trailer for what you will see. It's a 10-part series. It blends a lot of the academic classwork that is done along with the physical agility work that one has to be able to master in order to be a police officer. So, Julie, we'll start this.
Day one is a unique adventure. For most folks, is extremely stressful. The new group, the new batch.
Stop situated, get your butt in the classroom and sit down. Do not touch anything on that desk. Do we understand that? Yes, ma'am.
What can we expect? Hopefully we're getting what we would consider a good crop of recruits to, to mold and grow and ultimately, train them to come back and take our jobs at some point. Adults are unique folks. The group development is unique. A lot of the groups, when they come in, it's kind of chaotic. You have to hold them to task. It's inevitable that you hold them to task. Sometimes we need to refocus them, get their mind right.
Are we clear?
I will stress you out mentally and physically. That is a guarantee.
Alpha Squad, shoot! Sound off!
We prescribe more to a CrossFit model of fitness.
Your hands over your ears!
So it's pretty stressful.
We are order when there is chaos. If I don't make it to the scene, I'm worthless to the officer. I'm worthless to the civilian.
I see a lot of people dropping. Why are we dropping? There you go.
You start to see confidence, and I think that's the big part.
1, 2.
Hold it. Follow up, follow up.
It's a 24-week academy. It is cumulative academy, meaning that everything that they learn, they're expected to be able to perform come the end.
Then most people really aren't sure what they're getting into. They have a novel idea, a media Hollywood enhanced image of what a police officer does.
I think I speak for a lot of people when I say we definitely thought orientation was going to be a much more casual, sort of laid-back situation and atmosphere, but
Take a seat and sit down. Do not touch anything on your desk.
Day one is an eye-opening for the vast majority of recruits.
Orientation, it was cool. I didn't expect to get yelled at that day.
Why do you not have yours?
Come on.
Let's go. Let's go.
Hey, you losing your jacket, my man. You're just dragging it all over the floor.
We're waiting on you, Hill.
things were already starting. The ball was already rolling in terms of your reputation already starting to build.
Obviously, you didn't pay attention because you didn't do it.
Week one is very much high stress, very structured, rigid academy where we're trying to instill the basic discipline that we expect to see throughout the academy.
The whole job is going to be stressful. Every day is going to be stressful. You're putting your life on the line every single day. So if you can't stand getting yelled at.
For me, it's being fair and firm. You know, there's a time to induce stress. 18 minutes to run 1.5 miles. Are you kidding me? And there's a time to teach, coach, and mentor. And I believe that you have to have a very good balance of all of that. Do not come in here and not eat anything and go run 3 miles.
Fantastic.
And that's what I want to see, Pete. This is what I'm talking about. Even though you don't want to, you still push yourself and you dig deep right here. This is where I see how much heart you have to get through this. It's very important to be able to be the hammer, induce that stress on them, but when it's time to teach, it's time to teach. And it's time for them to learn. So you have to have a very good balance of all categories, I believe, and I feel like I play a good role in having that good balance. Because I love this right here. Come get me, come on. Understood? Yes, ma'am! Tomorrow's a new day. You guys are dismissed.
It's funny because everybody's like, well, would you take the taser or the OC spray? OC spray every time, man. I love it.
Being sprayed with OC spray, it hurts.
It's a burning sensation in your eyes and face. It kind of takes a fight at you for a couple minutes.
It's terrible. It's definitely one of those moments in life where you recognize, okay, this is a serious thing. It can't kill you.
For those of you who have never felt it, it feels like somebody is stabbing you with a knife in your eyes.
Because what they do is they get sprayed, and then they go and they do some basic defensive tactics, punching a bag, kicking a bag, weapons retention.
We expose the recruits to prove to them that they can fight through it.
Fight through it! Fight through it! So if somebody were to get a hold of my pepper spray and hit me with it, I would know that you are all but incapacitated.
Well, conflict resolution is exactly what it sounds like. There is conflict, whether it's a domestic, whether it's a fight, or a dispute over something at a 7-Eleven, where there's two heated people, and you got to figure out, how do I resolve this conflict?
About 100% of our job is communication, whether or not it's through just being there or having a conversation with somebody trying to solve a problem.
This job is not, 90% of it's talking to people and helping them handle their crisis that they may be going through.
You can make a difference by being real with them. You're a real person. Just because you wear a badge and a gun, it doesn't make you any different from the people you serve.
We're trying to diffuse the situation. You have to be able to communicate. And if you're not looking at somebody and trying to express your ideas or your thoughts, you're not going to get your point across.
I think we've grown so much as a team, and we've started to rely on each other a lot more.
Drilling that discipline into you, it works. It sucks, but it works. And you realize that kind of going on in the academy.
It's more about the attention to detail that they want to push.
Every time we went through something big like that, it just brought us all closer together.
2, 3. Hey! Throw your weapon! Engage her!
The training for Virginia Beach is just so incredibly high level.
Applying for this job, I was thinking, man, I've heard nothing but Virginia Beach is the hardest police department to get into. Man, you gotta be on your stuff to get into the Virginia Beach Police Department. If you get with them, you're high speed, you're doing the right thing.
This is the Virginia Beach Police Department. You're going to be tested physically.
Oh, God, here we go.
You're going to be tested emotionally.
I've never seen that man, and when you raped me!
You're going to be tested psychologically. And we absolutely are going to test your integrity.
I'm going to turn it actually over to Mr. Wood. This was your idea. You came to me with this idea. And so I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about why you wanted us to do that and how you think this turned out.
I appreciate the advance notice, too. Thank you. Well, I got to tell you, I guess about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I talked to Julie because, when you're looking at something on YouTube and it recommends other things, and something popped up, and I think it was the Austin Police Department had a series going through their police academy. And it was very well done, like this. It wasn't nearly as well done as this one, obviously, because Julie's taken it up another level. But, and I think Julie and I had also talked a few times over the years that the city's capable of doing so much more in terms of engaging its citizens through media. And I know Julie, she talked about this before, about how, I think during the retreat, talking about Twitter, and I'll steal your thunder for the next presentation, Twitter and Instagram and things like that, and Facebook, where people bring through, people are watching it now. frankly, on Facebook Live. And you're probably looking at the comments and people talking about this. And when you take this, and we all remember the original VBTV programming, and you know how it's okay, but it's not as engaging as this is. And I think when you do something like this, when they embedded this videographer in the academy, and I know several people that work over there, and they told me it was a horrible idea, it was going to be dreadful, they didn't want him in there. At the end of the academy, one of the guys came over, he says, we want to hire him, we want him here as our recruiter, and that sort of thing. And I think the class actually adopted him
pretty much
as and gave him a uniform and boots and all this kind of stuff that they paid for and did it. But you see this kind of thing, and it's going to be 10 episodes, and it follows through. And Julie shared with me the rough cuts of 3 of the episodes that I've watched, and they're quite good, and it kind of builds on some of these people, and some of the people you see, you don't see at the end. And they talk about why they're leaving. And I think as the chief will tell you, you know, we've got how many that have already bailed out of this academy that routinely do. You know, they go through all this vetting process, they go through background checks, they go through everything, and, you know, medical polygraph, and they tell them repeatedly what it's going to be like, and then they still drop out. And, you know, for whatever reason that they just do. And so it's hard to do that. And so you get this is a great recruitment tool, I think, which is important. I mean, again, Chief can tell you how hard it is to find a good quantity of qualified applicants that'll stay. I think this is a good thing. It shows what it is. I mean, you know, you see this and you see this is Virginia Beach. This is not the state minimum. And this shows, you know, it's the greatest city in the world, greatest police department in the world, like you say, and this is the kind of stuff that we should expect. And it's top quality video, I think, and I think it's a great way to reach out to people. People are going to watch this because it's well done, and I think that's important. And you know, I mean, I think most people hear the applause. Most people were engaged by it, so I think that's a great thing. So I'm really looking forward to it, and binge watch it on Netflix or wherever she's going to put it. But
Well, all I can say is good idea there, Jim. Nice job.
I'd like to take
Chief,
credit
looks
for
good
all
up
this
there.
Any questions about the police academy? I can tell you, as the councilman said, about 25% of the folks will resign before the time period comes. We just had the roughest couple of weeks recently because it involves a lot of the physical end of the academy, that is firearms, defensive tactics, and defensive driving. And sometimes somebody just does not have the fine motor skills to get through those 3 evolutions.
Well, we're mighty proud of everything that's going on over there, and this was really, really good stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. What do we have next, sir?
So, keeping Julie at the podium and bringing you back to your mid-year retreat, some of the discussion that went on with Lyle Sumac and what's going on across the whole nation with regards to how you as elected officials are being perceived, and maybe some of the treatment that's going on, and some of the conversation that goes on in social media, out on Facebook and other means. And so we took that conversation to heart, and Julie had actually just returned the week before from having been out on the West Coast at a conference, and so I asked her to put together her thoughts, and I also asked the team to put together maybe a unique way to maybe get the facts out. And so we're going to show you something today, and Julie, thanks for being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So one of the things that you talked about at your retreat was kind of some of the concern that you have over not all of the accurate information getting out. And you aren't alone. We share that as well. So we took a look, my staff, and I did some research, and you're going to see a couple of recommendations that we have at the end. But I want to give you a little bit of the background and the research. Lyle talked about what some other cities were doing. I looked at that. We'll bring that to you as well. And then the recommendations that we have. The reality is that there really is no one and nothing is immune from this rise of fake news being spread. you might remember that early on after the Mandalay Bay shooting, this individual was supposedly identified as the shooter. He's not the shooter. He's a comedian who was dressed for something totally different. Somebody co-opted this image and put it together, but we all know that the shooter was not a 32-year-old Islam convert named Samir al-Hajid. But that's just one. We also had, during Hurricane Irma, the fake news and the false information, rumors going around as the storm approached. Closer to home, somebody just recently was falsely telling Virginia voters that their polling places had changed. So we had that right leading up to the election. So there's the serious ones and then the not so serious ones, like whether Colin Kaepernick was going to be signed by the Patriots. And so Adam Schefter is actually a real reporter. This just doesn't happen to be his Twitter handle. Somebody else co-opted it and put that out there. Not only talked about it as being part of the Patriots, but then followed up and said that the Patriots decided not to sign him because of a call from the president. So you have that kind of thing, and then, horror of horrors, the suggestion that the Reese's peanut butter cups might actually be discontinued because there was a severe decline in sales, which is not the truth. It's still number one. One of my favorite ones is that Coke was going to be introducing a new product that had helium in it, so that you could actually alter your vocal cords, and that spread like wildfire too, and people were very upset because they couldn't find it in a store. So you have all of these things. Nobody's immune, but it's not new. These issues actually go back a number of years. And in fact, you've got the straight dope, which started out as a newspaper column back in the 70s, all the way up through some of the ones that you might know now. Snopes actually started in 1995. It's a well-established fact checker. So all of these sites are really converging around this whole issue of needing to check what is facts and what is fiction and what the rumors are that are going out. And it is a growing concern. There's courses and webinars that are being taught. This happens to be the museum in Washington, D.C. that is teaching a course on how to deal with it. You've got conferences and sessions. The one that I went to actually was called Navigating the Area of Alternative Facts, Restoring Truth and Trust in Media and Government. So you've got these kinds of things that people are flocking to in an attempt to try to deal with this information. There's research, there's articles, there's a lot of different things. The Pew Center has done some of the best research over a number of years that looked at this issue. And this is the rise of mobile devices, so that we know that part of the issue is that information can just spread that much further, that much faster because of the rise of mobile devices. You're seeing that more people are accessing news through their mobile devices, and it tends to be more older Americans who are the fastest growing group, mostly because they're the late adopters. We have already the early adopters, the younger population are already doing it, so the rest of us are catching up. But it's a pretty steep incline that you see a huge spike in that. So where people get their news, though, we're talking about social media, and that is continuing to grow, which helps to explain why we have a lot of misinformation that's spread. So even just in a year, you're seeing a little bit of an uptick between the people who often get their information from social media. So if that's the case, and a fifth of our population say that they often get it from social media, but you're looking at about half that says sometimes or often, then we know that it's a pretty significant group. People also recognize that fake news is a problem. And the majority of people say that fake news has left people confused about what's real and what's not. In fact, 64% say that it's a great deal is confusing. Now, interestingly, though, people say that it's actually other people who are confused. I know what I'm seeing, and I can evaluate it. It's everybody else who is confused. So the percentage of U.S. adults who are confident in their ability to recognize the news is fairly substantial. Almost 40% say that they're fairly confident that they can recognize the fake news when they see it. That doesn't necessarily mean that they will refrain from passing it on, because a lot of people would say, oh yeah, I saw that, but I still passed it on anyway. So they are contributing to kind of this great controversy over what's real and what's not. So the spread of information, we know it's social media. We know that it goes easier, it's faster, it's more pervasive, and you can see one of the old adages is Twitter is where news breaks, Facebook is where news goes. Although now that Twitter has upped the number of characters that it's allowing, much to the consternation of a lot of people, you can use 280 characters instead of 140. Twitter may be capturing more of that market. There's something that researchers are calling the illusory truth effect. And what it essentially says is the more often something's repeated, even if you know it to be false, you start to doubt. One of the classics research studies said that somebody talked about having the skirts that Scottish men wore were called saris. And everybody's like, well, no, they're not. They're called kilts. And it was repeated and repeated to the point where people were like, well, gosh, maybe it is a sari and it's not a kilt. And they just started to question their own perceptions. So they tend to mix up what's real and what's not. And then there is that popularity. It's an echo chamber. It's groupthink. So even though it's like, geez, I didn't think that's true, but if the people I hang out with know it to be true, then I must be wrong. There's that coupled with just an incredible increase in just the sheer volume of information. And there are some limits to the human brain about what we can process and how quickly we can process it. And attention spans tend to be shorter and shorter. And finally, there's just a general concern about a less application of critical thinking skills. That's especially true for younger people. And a lack of media literacy. They don't really know how to evaluate the information that they're reading or seeing. Most of the information, in fact, that the research is focusing on is how individuals should be able to address and evaluate bad information, and not so much the organization, and that's our challenge. Lyle, at your mid-year workshop, talked about what other cities are doing, and he mentioned that some of them had some websites. So I did find a few. They're actually kind of buried on their sites, and as you'll see, as I just click through them, they're pretty text-heavy. Some are older, some are newer, some have need help discerning fact or fiction. We will help you out. And then there's the rumors and trending topic. They're going to eliminate misinformation, which I thought was a laudable goal. And then finally, this one that kind of repeats it in such a broad category. So they're either very, very text heavy or they're trying to address the issue by repeating the information. Interestingly, though, there's a fair amount of research that says there are some recommendations to follow, and one of them is to focus on, even though they focus on the individual, that if you repeat the untruth, it tends to reinforce it. So a suggestion is to limit that. That we've got to somehow present new information to unseat that untruth, and encourage the use of a fake news browser, a plugin in your browser. Does anybody use one? Does anybody use a fake news detector browser? So there are a few. And you'll see there's the BS detector, there's the fake news alert, and there's this is fake. And there are plugins for your different browsers. And what they do is evaluate websites and some of the other sources of information that you go to. And based on repeats and some algorithms that they have, they will tell you this is probably not a trustworthy site. So some people have had some good use and good luck in using those to combat the false information. But ultimately then, the rest of it is to use an unlikely source. So who would be somebody who's arguing against their self-interest? That may be a source to use to help combat false information. And that to simply just swamp it, to give a lot of the information about why something is not true, to get it out fast. And finally, there's some good research coming out of the University of Pennsylvania that says, video may be more effective than text in addressing these issues. So here's where we're gonna look. We already have a pretty good presence on social media, and we're going to continue to use those platforms to address the factual inaccuracies, and that's really important. There's lots of opinion out there, but to address factual inaccuracies is where I think we have the opportunity to make some headway. We have good presence on Facebook, Nextdoor, and Twitter. We are going to add Instagram because that will capture a market, a demographic that is a younger demographic. We have a great inspiration piece for that. We're going to introduce a new webpage, and we have a new show. that I'll share with you in just a minute. We also then will broaden our engagement strategies, and I'm recommending, and Dave is supporting, that we adopt a new tool for public engagement that allows a mobile-first approach that gets it not only online, but in person as well. So if you look at where we are, these numbers are even updated from what I sent you the other day, which is a really good indication that we've got good growth in our social media trends. We've got almost 29,000 on Facebook, just over 67,000 on Twitter. On Nextdoor, we're right at 80,000 already, which is a really strong indicator for our group. Followers on YouTube don't tend to happen. We're almost at 900,000 views, and we just reinvested in our LinkedIn page with Human Resources. And just since April 18th, when we launched the new site, we've gained more than 1,000 followers there. I want to put it in perspective, though, where we fit with some of the other cities, and I'm just going to use Facebook. So if you look at where we are with likes and followers, we're just shy of 30,000. Other cities, and I just picked some from across the country, Austin, double our size, but about half of our followers. The same is true with Charlotte. Seattle is even less, at just shy of right around 1,500 followers on their social media sites. Denver is right under 10,000. Atlanta is about our size, and they've got just less than 5,000 followers. Long Beach is the only city that's kind of in our neighborhood and about our size. And then otherwise, we'll round out the list with Raleigh and then Miami. So you see that we're really well positioned with the followers that we have and that we're continuing to build our audience. We had about a 13% increase just in the last year. So the new sites that we're proposing is Instagram and then the new webpage, and I'm going to show you that. Here's our inspiration for our Instagram page, because a lot of Instagram pages are really just photos, and we have a great collection of photos, you know, Craig. So you know that we've got a terrific site already. Flickr has just surpassed 3 million views, and we've got over 10,000 photos there. Instagram is going to be a little bit different, and Boston does a great job. So we're going to shamelessly steal great ideas from other cities. We particularly like Boston because they not only integrated great photos, but they do some really nice storytelling about employees who are making a difference, in this case, or volunteers for us. And then finally, they're also looking at diversity in their economic platforms. And so this was just one of the ads that they had for one of their recent public meetings, so that you can kind of see that this is a direction that we'll head with our Instagram page when we launch it. And we'll also have the ability to cross-promote against all our platforms. So our new webpage is going to, originally we were thinking about Fact or Fiction. I think I'm going to introduce a new name, which I'll show you in just a minute, that will go with the show that we're going to propose. But it will have a companion piece to our news show, and we'll be able to lay it out. So if you have particular issues that you want us to make sure that we're highlighting on there, we can certainly do that and make sure that we've gotten the rumor, and then we'll support it with the new show. So I'm not going to really talk about the show. This is actually a longer segment than it will be in real life. It's about 5 minutes. It's probably about a minute or a minute and a half longer than the show will do, because we decided we have the talent explain the nature of this show. And so I'll let her do that first and share it with you.
Hello, and welcome to this very first episode of VB 411. I'm your host, Ms. Information, and each week I'll bring you news, fun facts, and some of my favorite things from around King Neptune's favorite stomping grounds, Virginia Beach. I know the few minutes you spend with me each week are valuable. There are so many other things that you could do, so many cat videos yet to watch. So I plan to make this investment worth your while. I'll have great guests. We'll get out of the studio for some person-on-the-street interviews. And best of all, I'll answer your questions, or find someone who can, in a segment I'm calling Rumor Has It. First, the news highlight of the week in our Gold Starfish segment. Everyone here at VB 411 is happy when we can tell stories about creatures returning to the sea. So, honey, you know we were over the moon when Piglet, Fuchsia, and Indigo got to go home last week. Each sea turtle had been cared for and rehabilitated at our very own Virginia Aquarium's Marine Animal Care Center. Safe travels, little buddies. Speaking of travel, tourism is a major industry in Virginia Beach. See what I did there? Fact of the matter is, visitors to Virginia Beach contribute about $56.4 million to the city's general fund. That translates into about 10 cents on the property tax rate and helps pay for essential city services like police, fire, emergency medical care, schools, stormwater, and roads. But visitors also help pay for projects like the revitalization of the boardwalk, the convention center, and the Sandler Center through dedicated taxes imposed specifically to help pay for tourism-related amenities that locals like us get to enjoy too. Now, from our Rumor Has It in bucket. Victoria, one of our Facebook friends, asked, is it true there will be no holiday lights on the boardwalk this year because the City Council will not approve money to update the electrical systems? No, it's not true there will be no lights. I mean, yes, there will be a holiday lights display this year. The 411 is, the City Council voted to approve $250,000 to fix the electrical problems that plagued the old lighting display and caused it, after years of exposure to the salt, sand, and water, to be unsafe. While the lighting display may not be quite as large as in years past, city staff and contractors have been testing new technologies and displays so that we can continue this special holiday tradition. We have time for one more in-bucket item. Oh, I've seen this question in a few places. This inquiring mind wants to know why we need another sports center. We already have the field house in the Princess Anne area. That's an excellent question. We're really talking about two different areas and two different purposes here. The Sportsplex in the Princess Anne area consists of a field house and several ball fields. It is where our local and regional sports leagues play, and of course the field house is also used for corporate events and even birthday parties. Separate from that, we have a robust sports tourism business in our convention center, everything from wrestling and basketball tournaments to cheerleading and taekwondo. More than 100,000 hotel rooms were booked last year by people attending sports events here in Virginia Beach. The convention center wasn't really built to accommodate all of the sporting events, and a study the city commissioned last year identified a need for an indoor sports center near our hotels to capture more of the growing market for traveling tournaments. These tournaments tend to take place in the fall, winter, and spring and bring visitors year-round. A facility built specifically for sports could increase hotel occupancies by 20% or more and free up the convention center to schedule the meetings, conventions, and conferences it was designed to host. The sports center would be built on the west end of the convention center and would use tourism-related revenues to pay the debt on the construction. That will do it for this week's edition of VB 411. Join me next time for a new show. And if you heard or read something that you have questions about, let me know. I'll get you the facts, and you may see your topic featured on a future episode. Email me at misinfo@vbgov.com. Bye for now.
She's talented.
Oh yeah. Taking advantage of the talent right here, at home. So that takes care of kind of some of the misinformation part on the tactics side. Publicinput.com is the tool that we're going to recommend that takes the place of our virtual town hall. One of the deficits, one of the downsides of virtual town hall, it's certainly served the city well for a number of years. It has no mobile first technology. Somebody's got to come to our website. They've got to log in, and the response formats are limited. So publicinput.com allows for that mobile first technology. It gives us some ability to integrate live technology with online tools. We can embed it in websites and our social media. It's a really nice and attractive interface. And it has a lot of data and visual analytics that we can employ to determine how we're doing in this area. So there are some cities that already use it, and I just wanted to show you a couple of those pages. This happens to be in Wake County, and it just shows kind of the ability to not only brand but include video and then have different response formats put in, and it's a pretty user-friendly piece to include. The really cool thing about this technology is you can actually draw on it. So let's suppose we are trying to do some transit planning. This tool was actually created by transportation engineers, and you wanted to know, or our transportation engineers wanted to find out where people go from one place to another. People can actually draw. So if you say, where do you go on a weekend? How far do you travel? You can actually draw your route, and what we would end up with then is a pretty robust summary of where all those map points are and how they all fit together. So that was an example from that. This is actually called, I think, the mayor's mode, but it gives a lot of the analytics that you find with each of the questions all across the top. There's a different one that shows where all the different responses are. It's tied to URLs, so you couldn't stuff the ballot box, so to speak, unless you kept logging into every single possible different tool that you've got. And then you get the opportunity to have these discussion points, whether you publish them live, you have a real meeting versus a virtual meeting, the flexibility that this tool offers for just a slight bit more of an investment. It gives us, I think, a lot of more versatility. So this is the direction that we're going to head in order to engage more people, so they don't have to necessarily come to a public meeting to participate, but we have more options to include projects that we'll use throughout the city. And with that, I'll turn it over to you for any questions that you might have.
Questions of Julie? That means you did a great job. Oh, excuse me.
This is on our public cable channels. When you said you were out on the West Coast, whenever you go out to the West Coast, Seattle, San Diego, LA, they open up their media channels to the citizens to use. Public groups, they are truly public access channels, and they actually use them to have debate issues on sales taxes, which they have to do out quite often in San Diego, those kind of issues, and they have it, much like public television, pros and cons. We've never used our Channel 48 for any kind of really community discussion among community people. It's always been a passive one way. That's something I think people watch stuff that's interesting, they don't watch stuff that's passive. I just throw that out because you say you're going out to the West Coast, but you'll see a lot of places use their public access video channels to, they even have the Master Garden, lots of open up to nonprofit groups, talk about their stuff. It's a lot more, provide an avenue for communication. I would encourage us to look at some of those things too, besides just mobile, because it is video, and you're right. Video is what people like to watch. They don't want to read.
A lot of communities, I worked in one similar to what you described, Mr. Moss. It's actually a separate channel. It's a public access channel as opposed to the government channel. So they have kind of separate tools, and there is one, and we don't have that here. So that may be certainly one that we can look at with the franchise agreement for sure.
Any other questions or comments?
I would just encourage the council, as you come across rumor control or need rumor control, that you feel free to send a note to Julie or send it to me or send it to a respective DCM so that we can run the book on it and provide the kind of a classy, informative, picture, video centric response so that people really get it. And then we'll be developing that webpage so that we're able to at least present not pages and paragraphs of information, but short, quick hitting, so that folks, and also give links where they can research even deeper.
Very good. Yes, sir.
How often is that going to run?
The show is going to be weekly, and that's why we'll supplement with the website.
And we'll send you a link when one comes up. Julie will send it direct to you all on your preferred email, so you can click it on your device and
We'll
watch
peg it to a certain day, so you'll always know. It'll appear. Right now, we were thinking Fridays, so we'll tape on a Wednesday following a council meeting day. So if there's something that came up at the meeting that's important, we can add that to that next day's taping, and then we'll have the edit and ready to go on Friday.
And when does the Academy video start?
So we're gonna let the trailer run for a month, and I'm figuring it'll be first of the year that we'll just launch the whole series.
Any other questions or comments? Julie, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Good stuff. Emergency Medical Services there,
Yes, sir.
is Chief Brazel. There he is, right there.
So it's been a while since we came back to you on retention and recruitment. If you recall, at your goal-setting workshop 2 years ago, you established that as a almost universal concern, and I've asked Ed to come in today and give you an update on how he's progressing.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, Mr. Hanson, it's hard to follow a couple exciting videos, but we'll try to put on a good tap dance here. Why am I here? We're going to talk about volunteer membership trends and looking at some of the activities we're doing. We came to you back in about 2015 and identified that post-recession there was a decline in volunteerism around the country, and we were seeing that within our squads, and we said then that we need to make some course corrections. The sky wasn't falling, but we needed to do some adjusting. And since then I've come back and did a little bit of talk with the budget, and then last June I want to go really in depth in our recruiting retention today. So we're the numbers today. I can't say enough. You've heard over the years, there's 1,000 people in EMS, and that is a fact. There are 1,000 people in EMS, but that's 75 part-time lifeguards, that's me, that's a lot of different players doing a lot of different important work. But the real nuts and bolts of it, in the back of an ambulance, qualified to be alone with the patient, running on duty today, it's 438 people. We've got behind them 211 the training pipeline, some special operators that are on boats, SWAT medics, that sort of thing, some support personnel, and then 86 on leave. Now, those 86 are qualified to be in the ambulance, but again, you've got people who get hurt, take a break, what have you. That's pretty typical even in the career service. The realities of recruiting retention. I know you just had the police chief up here talking about their training and losing people. Not everybody wants to join a rescue squad. I've tried, and for some reason, not everyone wants to come out and do this. Not everybody can complete the selection, the training process. And most people, their horizon isn't the 25-year horizon. They're coming in this, particularly, we're bringing younger folks, and our big hook on our recruiting is come start a career. And so we get them, we train them, and they get in that career. Now the challenge, and we'll talk about this, is keeping them once they get that career. And in the end, we've got to deliver the service no matter what. Rain, shine, Christmas Day, we've got to deliver the service, which is part of the challenge. I'm proud to say we're doing it today. Those 438 people I showed you, we're putting an average of 12.4 ambulance on the street every day, and we're doing that. 94% of those ambulance crews are volunteers, so we're succeeding. But looking at recruiting retention, we're always our worst critics, and we're always looking to do better. In 2015, our analyst did a massive survey of our members, did a big report. This was actually reviewed by some outside marketing people to validate our methodology. The auditor, city auditor, since this was a priority, came in and did a report earlier this year. Even sent secret shoppers to join the rescue squad to see how the process would work. And of course, we're constantly looking at it. Staff, squads. I have many love sessions with the manager and deputy city manager. We talk about this sort of thing. So we're constantly looking at better ways to do this. The thing comes up a lot about recruiting. We don't do enough about recruiting. Or what are you doing about recruiting? And recruiting means a lot of things to a lot of people. And we talk, have you ever heard the story of the elephant and the blind man? That you take a blind man and you take him to the leg of an elephant, describe an elephant. He says an elephant's like a tree. But the guy goes to the body, he says an elephant's like a wall. And so it's a lot goes into recruitment. And it really boils down to three things. You got to attract them, screen them, select them, and then get them out there working. That's the whole part of recruitment. Anybody who works retail restaurant, it's more than just getting them to the door. You got to get them in and get them to buy the product. So we divide it up and put our energy there. And in terms of attraction, word of mouth is still the number one thing. People join because of the experience of what they've met, either people that are out there or people that were former members. I was talking church a couple weekends ago. A person sitting a pew over ran rescue in the 70s and was talking about the great experience they had in the 70s at Kempsville. So Our number one player out there and actually the outreach marketing is the Virginia Beach Rescue Squad Foundation. They're doing the heavy lifting with over $100,000 a year investment in a full-time recruiter, getting out there. That's that lives need saving ads that you hear on the radio and on TV. They're doing the heavy lifting on that. And then EMS, we're out there at events. We're putting things out. If you were at a library recently, you've seen even little bookmarks for your rescue squad out there. Depending on where you live, we customize that. But when we broke it down, we just started tracking this year. We asked applicants again, what made you join? And as I said, word of mouth, hands-on is the highest. Face-to-face, meeting with the recruiter, or getting that just kind of that direct contact, it's very slim. It all goes together. There's not one thing. Somebody doesn't just wake up in the morning and get Starbucks, they see an ambulance crew and say, I want to join the rescue squad. They saw the recruiter, they saw the article on TV, in the news. It all goes together, so word of mouth is what they cite as the number one. So once we've attracted them, selecting them, this is where we put our big emphasis over the last 18 months. We've gone to our website, put a lot more information on the website, defining the expectations. We've gone online with applications. It used to be you'd call, hey, I want to join the rescue squad, and it might be a month before you could come into a cattle call session. It wasn't personal, it just wasn't working. Now you go in, you apply online at 3 in the morning, and within a couple business days, someone is gonna reach out to you and say, hey, come in, we wanna talk to you, and we'll process your paperwork, get you in, okay? And then with that, we get them involved earlier. There's online classes they can start, there's some ride-alongs, there's all sorts of things, so we don't lose them in that interim until they get into a class. So our performance, the top line is the number of applications received, and then the bottom is the applications approved. Now you're gonna see this big jump in 2016. We changed our process, and we think there was a backlog, kind of a surge. And immediately, I start getting a migraine when I see that drop for this year, but I wanna point out, we found that of the applicants coming in, sometimes as many as 2/3, or a third rather, were not making it through. And we went in and evaluated why were they going. We losing them, it was either they didn't understand the things up front or driving. So what we did, we put more information in the website over the past year, and also when you get that 3 in the morning application, we run a driving check before we call them. So if they're not eligible to be here, and that is the number one barrier, is actually bad driving records. If they're not eligible, we don't process the application through. We contact them, tell them what they need to do to heal, but the bottom line is we've gone from now to about a 50% versus a 60-65% not acceptable. So while that number of applicants is going down, the quality of them is going up. So we've made a change. It'll be interesting to see how the trend goes now this change is in place. We've gotten more efficient at getting them into class, telling them what to expect. We've got a new class every other month with the new resources we receive. We're going to try to cram another class in there. Obviously, we've got the new building dedicating 10:30 this Saturday. If you want to be there, invited. We got a new building, extra instructors, so more capacity. We're also putting more of these classes online to help get people through with less inconvenience. So this is the exciting one. This is our training pipeline. The top line is the folks in class that are in EMT class. The bottom line are people we qualified throughout the year. Now the 2017 numbers are projections, but you can see our numbers are way up in the training pipeline in class, and it takes about 3 to 6 months once you finish class to get qualified. So there's a lag between the dark blue and the light blue line, but that's the encouraging signs that we're making progress in our intake and getting people in there. Whoops. Oh, there we go. But again, we're not sitting on our laurels. What are we doing? And look at the work in progress. We are looking at our tactics. Right now, we kind of cast a broad net. Are there better audiences to reach? Are there better ways to do it? Again, I talked about we put bookmarks on the library. I'm a big library patron. Not everybody goes to the library. So, but for $100 worth of printing and the librarians are putting it out there for us, that's a simple. But there's other things that may be the better bang for the buck. We're improving our coordination with the Rescue Squad Foundation. They do great work. I think we could do better coordination between the two of us. We're moving in that direction. Expanding our marketing activities. We are out there, staff's out there. I've eaten a lot of rubber chickens this year with various groups, talking about the rescue squads. And we've got, in this last budget, we brought on a media communication specialist. Her focus in the first year was on the internal communication, social media, and we're about to broaden her horizon a little more on the external. And of course, with the rescue squad level, we bought each of the squads a recruiting kit table displays, banners and things, and we're doing some training there. And we really need to leverage them, particularly those support members, to get them out a little more to help us with that word of mouth. So in terms of retention, it's much like the elephant. Lots of people stay for different reasons. So what we're doing about that is lots of events. We did Rock the Squads last year. We worked with the foundation, Joel Rubin, on that. We rent the aquarium one night every year. Events at my office, cookouts, you name it. We've improved our member communications, a lot more presence in social media, a lot more information flow out of my office, and the training opportunities. I can't underemphasize the value of retention with training. It's not just about making them skilled out in the field. People are more comfortable, obviously, if they know more, but they like the new. I mean, trauma is the new right now. The trauma with all the shootings and terrorist things. So we've been able to, with the new building and new instructors, we've been able to get some backlog we've had there in terms of specialized training classes, and that's happening. The other part is flexibility. We are pretty rigid in terms of the scheduling requirements, but where feasible, we're implementing more flexibility. Got a team, a volunteer team, put together some ways to look at how can we do better. One of the things that we found was people we recruit based on start a career. And then the person, they go out and then they get a job with a private ambulance service or fire department in another city, and they're doing it. They're getting their action. So how do we get them to come back and still volunteer with us? Well, we set up a membership classification for those folks where they do less duties. They're getting their proficiency in another community, so we do less duties and bring them in. So that's one example, and we've got a long way to go, but we're making progress there. And the numbers, this was the trend. So you see the trend line at the top is all the qualified people, and the bottom is the ones that are actually active. The top, there's always about 20% on leave. You saw that was that downward trend we talked about in 2015. We feel that we've settled out, and now we're looking on that upward trend. Going back to that training graph I showed you, we feel that we're on the upswing, and we've got a lot of work to do, but I feel very positive about where we're going. So where do we go next? I don't like to necessarily get in how the sausage is made, but when we start talking about exits and data, as we try to be more proficient in this, we found we were listing people as exits or dropped if they came in and applied and came to one night of EMT class and then they left. That was an exit. And there was no separation between that person and the person who'd been here 25 years and retired. That was an exit. So we're better defining going and saying and talking about the attendant in charge, the EMTs. We love all the people who do the other things, but really what rubber meets the road is the core of the ambulance. So we're more specific exit data. We now call when an AIC leaves. I have a staff member that we brought on board a couple months ago, shuffled some folks' responsibilities, and she tracks them down. She calls, why did you leave, and trying to get more specifics than just my life changed, I ran out of time. Again, we're capitalizing on our expanded training capability, and we've got to really look at these more flexible approaches to scheduling. We've gotten, we require 4 duties a month for a new person. On average, our folks are doing 3. We've got a lot of flexibility built in, but there may be better ways. What I'm seeing is some inconsistencies. Whereas what I like to do is a squad member comes in and says, hey, I've got finals this week, I'm in college or I'm in grad school. Hey, can I do a couple of my duties down at Creed's or Blackwater so I can sleep and get my 1 call a shift versus my 9 calls a shift? We love it, come on down. But some rescue squads are saying, if you're not doing your time with us, then you're not doing your time at all. Well, that doesn't work. So we've got to look at some more consistencies, some ways. How do I find out if a guy at Rescue 77 has to leave at 5 in the morning, but a guy at Rescue 44 can come in at 5 in the morning? How can I partner that up? And so that's the next step that we're working on. We've got some teams working on it, but it may require more central coordination of that scheduling. So I recognize that is a big issue. And so with that, though, on retention, our job, obviously we want to keep people, but we want a positive experience for our folks. Well, something personal experience, I'll go back to my military days. The Navy said, I'm going to pay for your college. 4 years of college, you're going to get some work experience, leadership, and make you very marketable for the world. 4 years, you give us 4 years of your life. Okay? We met our commitment. I gave them 7, but I had a great opportunity with the City of Virginia Beach, and I went to leave, and I didn't retire or resign soon enough, actually. My CO said, I'm going to help you out. Because I would rather have somebody outside the Navy who's talking good about the Navy and a person who's bitter for the rest of their life about the Navy. If word of mouth is our biggest recruiting, then let's give everybody the most positive experience they can have while they're here. so that they go out and they are our ambassadors out there helping bringing these people in, and taking their life-saving skills and the career development with them. But let's keep them as long as possible, keep them happy, but then have them be our future ambassadors out there, recruiters. So with that, we've done a lot. We've done a lot of work over the past couple of years, shuffled, looking at new initiatives, some sputters and stops in some places, some great success in others, and we're not going to stop resting on our laurels. But the investment is strong. The new building, $5 million government investment. Drive right down Virginia Beach Boulevard. It's right there, all lit up at night. Can't miss it. The investment is there, and the investment by the foundation. So we believe we've got the foundation for success and big things ahead. And with that,
Thank you so much. Jim Wood has a question.
Sir.
Thanks. And I would, guess I'd remind the council that this is why retreats are valuable, because I think if you remember it was Dave's very first retreat as city manager, this item was the only item that got 11 votes. And you normally where Lyle is keeping track of what gets 6, and Dave knows to be a good city manager, you gotta be able to count to 6 and 11 to get stuff done. So this is good, and it clearly shows that what the council picked as a priority is continuing to be a priority, and that's good to hear that that's going from the manager down to the departments. I serve as liaison to the volunteer, Office of Volunteer Resources, and one thing that Father Park has done this year, which is a little bit different than we've done in the past, is instead of having all the volunteers come down to City Hall to get recognized, he takes the show on the road, and he'll go to a rescue squad meeting and honor somebody in front of their friends, which is infinitely better than them coming here and being honored in front of people they don't know because their friends are at work or what have you. And Steve's been down there. Ed's been in a couple of them. Ms. Henley's been in a few. I think Lewis has been. So people have been to a number of these things. And but the one thing that I find interesting is you talk about the rubber chicken circuit. There's typically either a meal served or there's some sort of social interaction there before or after the meeting. You get the opportunity to talk to people from all the different squads. And as Ed mentioned, and I think that's a very good point about how the different squads view your time and things like that. People at different squads have different issues or complaints and that sort of thing. So it's kind of some of the stuff I just take some notes on. The one thing that I've heard kind of universally and to address this to you is the one thing that the volunteers, they all want to be treated the same as the career folks. And a couple of things that they've mentioned is they have the same responsibilities for providing patient care, so they want to make sure that they have the same ability to do administrative supervisory things. One of the guys told me he's a retired Navy captain or Navy something, I don't know what he was, Navy officer, and that he felt he had the ability to be in more of a supervisory role or a leadership role, which I thought was interesting. But he said he didn't want to have a job where it was just kind of a make-work thing. He really wanted to help, which I thought was good. The training, I think you're exactly right. They talk about training over and over and over. The EMS symposium that was this week was one thing that they all talked about. The one thing, though, that's interesting, the EMS symposium is an event that goes on from Wednesday through Sunday, I believe, down in Norfolk at the Marriott, and it's where they get their continuing education. And you can do all that, and you can knock out, I guess, most of your requirements in a couple of days, but it's expensive. It costs a couple $100 for people to do it. Some of the squads will pay for it, some won't. So you end up having volunteers that go down there, spend their own money. Now, granted, EMS does have classes for different things, but this is where everybody can get them all done at once because maybe they're procrastinating or what have you, but it's just the easiest way to get them all done, and maybe they can't carve out the time. So that's one thing that they asked about, is whether or not the city could reimburse them or come up with some funding to do that sort of training. The other thing, and this goes back to something the mayor and I've talked about repeatedly, is the scheduling, which tends to remain an issue on that. The one guy told me, he said, well, he said, I've come to this symposium for 2, 3, 4 days, whatever it was. He said, and there's some career staff here. They're getting paid to be here, and they'll get, I guess theoretically, they'll get overtime if they work, or if they're not working or what have you. But so he was talking about whether or not they could get credit towards their volunteer service because they're going to be there for so many hours. And then, but just going back to that thing, and I'm glad you mentioned that, I know of one person who resigned because she said that she only could work 1 or 2 shifts a month for 3 or 4 months, but I guess, I don't know if it was EMS admin or her squad or whatever, said, no, that doesn't work. And so she just resigned rather than doing that. And I guess she was worried because she lost her seniority. And then the only other thing is, and I think I shared this with you earlier today, is the specialty teams people. There seems to be a question as to whether or not people who volunteer for these specialty teams are actually required to do their core ambulance duties first. And I don't know if that's impacted in that number that you have there. I know some of the teams don't have EMTs, like the boat stuff is more technical, but the ones that are like bike and squad truck.
They all do, they have to do their ambulance duties. There's no credit given for
So
those
they have to
folks.
do whatever they're mandated.
Now, some of the specialists are SWAT medics because of the amount of training they do with the police department, their deployments. They're in a different process, but they each do one duty a month on the ambulance as well. But if you're looking at like squad truck, bike team, that sort of thing, they all should be pulling their ambulance duties. Scholarships, we've done scholarships in the past. That's one of those things we can certainly do. We sent people to Rescue Council. We paid for symposiums in the past. I'll have to look in why we didn't do it this year. Nobody got overtime at training, I can tell you that, but that was a voluntary thing. But symposiums are great when you talk about the leader. That's how I got my start. I took those classes and I took leadership classes. I mean, yes, I got my engineering degree, my naval officer stuff, but I need to learn how to spell EMS and PIO and things. And I learned all that by taking the leadership classes at Symposium. And then that's the great thing about our department and many other places in this city is that if you come in, you got a skill and you want to do a program, we'll find a way for you to do it. If somebody wants to do mass casualty training or be an instructor or something, we'll do it for them. There comes a point as you work up that somewhere there's certain responsibilities that may or may not be able to be done. We're always chipping away at that. I was a volunteer field supervisor back in the day, but then as things evolved, is how do we best plug in that career volunteer to make sure there's equality within the limits of regulatory stuff. But we're always looking for ways to get the volunteers to do more. Absolutely.
The flexible schedule, because that seems to be the issue.
Again, the flexible scheduling, so, each case, we look at each on a case-by-case basis. So if somebody comes and says, look, I can only do one duty a month for 3-6 months, we look at that. A lot of it's let's meet in the middle. I can do one duty a month for the next 4 years. There comes a point of proficiency and involvement that is that workable? But for temporary basis, absolutely. We work it out, or people will do duties at a lower volume station. Blackwater's really nice. It's not a low end station. But or there's some squads that people do half shifts. They 6 to 12 or 12 to 6. It's getting the schedulers against that consistency that some schedulers aren't as accommodating. And so that's what I need to more of a unifying approach to that, so we can match those people up.
So that's done at the squad level, not at the city level?
Primarily at the squad level, yes. But we have
Thought they went to a central system some time ago.
We coordinate it, but each squad, they write their own schedule and they bring it to us to massage it and improve it. But there's some efficiencies to be there that we're working on.
I would just follow up on what Jim said. I do think the flexibility there is critical for us to continue to have people serve. And I was doing 6-hour shifts from 6 to noon, and I hadn't been there 10 years, and I think proficiency comes about on, like, if you're at a station, you have those 9 calls a night. You're going to be proficient if you do 6 versus 12. You really are. And I think flexibility with that. Think about it, folks. 4 12-hour shifts a month. That's a lot of time. That's a heck of a lot of giving by our citizens. Not to mention the training that you just heard about. I'm a recording. I know you're tired of hearing me, but I think the more flexibility there is going to be more successful in us having more volunteers.
You're loud and clear, sir.
Any other questions or comments? We thank you so much. Thanks for the progress you're making. And we'll go to next, family leave policy.
All right.
Yes, sir. And we're joined today by the Director of Human Resources and her
Hello,
team.
Regina. We're glad to have you.
Thank you.
One of your challenges at the mid-year was to get involved in how we are providing opportunities for families to be created and to expand and to support our workforce. And so we're coming at you today with a proposal having done exactly that. So Regina, thanks for being here.
Thank you. I'd also like to introduce Melissa Bauer. She is the Employee Relations Manager in Human Resources. And I'd like to thank David Bradley from Management Services for being here. He and Patty Phillips, the Director of Finance, spent a lot of time with us as we worked through to make this a reality to bring forward to you. And of course, Shelley Johnson is always with me.
Well, we're glad to have all y'all here. Thank you very much for being here.
All right, we have previously discussed that turnover is increasing in our organization. It's not a surprise. We expected that, and we're seeing that across other organizations as well. Our turnover for FY17 was at 6.9%, and that is not including retirements. 6.9% is not high, but it is high when you're used to seeing 4% turnover. So it is a little bit disconcerting to some people when they see the 6.9% turnover. But perhaps the more troubling aspect of this is that half of our turnover is among employees who have been with our organization for less than 5 years. So they're not staying long-term with our organization, which is what we knew we were starting to see. So this, coupled with some of the streamlining of benefits that we have seen over the last few years, makes now a good time to review our benefits to help ensure that they are assisting us with the recruitment and retention we need of quality employees. So today I want to discuss two items with you. One is the extended sick leave program, which is an existing program that we would like to modify. And the other is a new program for maternity and parental leave. We currently have an extended sick leave program, and it is provided for in city code. And that program says that we will have a bank of sick leave that can be given to employees who are bank members. It also provides that we will have a sick leave review board. That review board consists of employees, and there is one citizen who also serves on the board. This board is responsible for looking at requests for extended leave, and they will determine whether or not they will grant someone leave for their documented illness. If an employee receives a grant of leave, that leave must be paid back. A portion of that leave is paid back. Alternatively, the program allows for donations. Employees can solicit donations to cover their time out of the office. If they receive donations, that time does not have to be paid back. Okay? For the sick leave, extended sick leave program, it only applies to our VRS Plan 1 and Plan 2 employees. So we are interested in making some changes to this program for a variety of reasons. For one, hybrid employees are not included in the program. The reason that hybrids are not included is because they have short-term disability built into their employment. However, they may not be eligible for that short-term disability during their first year of employment. Also, when they do receive the short-term, it does not necessarily cover their entire pay. So, for example, the first 5 years of employment, it may only cover 60% of their pay. All right? Also, we have close to 1,900 full-time employees who are members of our bank. So most of the employees in our organization are not bank members. Instead, they prefer to rely on the donation system should they have a need for additional leave. Over the last 2 years, we had 158 employees approved for donations. So they did not have to pay back the time that was given to them. Some of the 158 people who received donations were actually bank members who chose not to get the grant, but instead to go the donation route. During that same 2-year time period, we only had 37 employees receive grants from the bank. Another factor I mentioned earlier, that we had the review board and it consists of employees and a citizen. Well, to make the determination as to whether or not someone will receive the grant or the donation, this board reviews the medical information for that employee. They also review the employment file, the discipline for that employee. So this is information that we would like to have more tightly contained. We have never had a breach of confidentiality. I do want to stress that. It's not that the board has done anything. They have been very confidential throughout this whole process, but we would like to contain that information more. So based on these factors, we would like to make a recommendation to eliminate the extended sick leave bank, as well as eliminate the review board. We would retain the donation aspect of the program, and we would make it available to a wider cross-section of our employees because our hybrids would be included. And as it is currently, any donations that are given would be supported by medical documentation, but it would be information that only is reviewed within HR. We also recommend that we have a leave reserve, and this reserve would be available for those employees who try to solicit donations, but they are unable to get enough to cover their need. And it could also be available for those employees who have a long-term illness, so that they don't have to go back and try to solicit again. So we would have the reserve available. So those are the changes that we'd like to see related to the current extended sick leave program. So today we also want to introduce a new benefit for maternity and parental leave. City Council has asked that we look into providing this maternity benefit, and we wanted to bring this back to you for your review. So paid maternity leave is a very slow-growing benefit. We were looking at some research, and it's showing that the benefit is growing at less than 1% a year. So that means that you may have employees who are taking the time off because under the Family Medical and Leave Act, they are given the time off, but FML does not require that that time off be paid. So some employees are taking this time off and without the accrued leave to cover their time out of the office. So when we were reviewing the possibility of implementing a maternity program, we were looking at the ages of our employees, and we found that the average age of our employees is 45. So that means that we have some employees that are in that sandwich generation. They're dealing with starting a family at the same time that they may be dealing with aging parents. So we decided that we wanted to present something to you that would cover both ends of that spectrum. So we are proposing the following program, and it's a program that we're referring to as our 3-2-1. So the program would provide 3 weeks of paid maternity leave, and this would be for the birthing parent. They would receive 3 weeks of paid leave. For the non-birthing parent, they would receive 2 weeks of leave, and this would be for the bonding. So if you had an adoption, for example, you don't have a birthing parent involved, you would have 2 non-birthing, both would receive 2 weeks of paid time off, okay? We are also proposing that we provide 1 week of paid time off to care for a parent. Now, of course, we would only grant leave if we had documentation showing that the criteria under the Family Medical Leave Act was being met. right? So to incorporate these program changes, especially the ones pertaining to eliminating the extended sick leave board, we would need to change one section of City Code, Section 2-120. And that code speaks to the requirement to have a board, and it speaks to the payback provisions that we discussed earlier. So with your approval, we will bring those changes to you in the future. Any questions on this?
Thank you very much for the presentation. Jessica?
I had a question about the short-term disability for the hybrid employees. Are they automatically enrolled, or is that something they have to do every year with open enrollment?
They are automatically enrolled as part of their VRS.
And then I had two comments. The one thing I noticed that wasn't mentioned with the maternity leave, have we looked at extending maternity leave for women who've had a C-section or any kind of other additional health complications related to their birth?
We did look at that, but at least for starting out, we were thinking that we would just do the flat 3 weeks. So usually it's 6 weeks that that a female is out with the birth. It can be 8 weeks for a C-section. We were not covering the entire time. We were just proposing the 3 flat weeks.
So I guess with my question, follow-up with that would be, is if we had an employee who had a C-section and it medically, she was not able to come back to work, what is the policy once they would, after their maternity leave, they default to any of their, whatever they had? Okay.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And then just a thought I had, I think we might, obviously down the future, want to consider what kind of policy we have in terms of after a mother has a baby, as it relates to a NICU stay and flexibility with hours. I went through that with my son, so I can just speak from experience, having that understanding from the employer's perspective, being able to work around a schedule if you have a child in the NICU.
Mm-hmm.
I think that should be something we're looking towards as well.
Paul?
But otherwise,
What is the cost of the additional paid leave?
Right. And that is why we brought David with us, and we spent a lot of time with
Honey,
David.
David was here for a reason.
Well, I was, because it really should be, except for the other part, should be no additional cost if you're not having part-time. It should be a wash cost because you're still paying them.
Right. So,
It should be revenue neutral on the benefit side if you don't hire part-time people or something.
and the way that David has put it,
Somebody has to do what they were supposed to be doing, so.
That's
yeah,
true in my
okay.
office today.
yeah, so the way that David has put it is that we're already paying the salary of the employees. So the possible increase in cost could be if someone really did have to be brought in to handle the work, or if there was overtime. But that's on a case-by-case basis. As well as, there may be some accrued leave time that has to be paid at the end that they would have otherwise used.
Shannon?
So if both partners work at the city, it would be 5 weeks or 3 and 2? Is that what I'm assuming?
3 and 2,
They'll go through
correct.
That time.
Yes.
Other questions or comments? John?
The reason why, in fact, I pushed how this brought earlier,
Yes.
because I really think this is important. I live with this every day, because we give people 6 weeks. That is the Department of Defense, and we don't get to pay people overtime, we don't get to bring new people in, we just have to suck it up and we eat it. And that's, whether it's a ship or whatever it is, that's just how it works. But I could see why you might not have the same, federal flexibilities that we have. So I think Barbara, there probably is some minor cost. But I think relative to the message that it sends, I think this is something we ought to send, the right message. I wish, hopefully downstream we can maybe do more than 3, but I understand the small steps, and I think the thing you're doing with the sick bank is the right approach. And I assume you're taking the bank leaves to establish the initial reserve fund. I assume that's where that leave is coming from. The leave that's in the leave bank that you have today, because I don't know if that's actual hours that are in there, I assume, right?
Right, there will be some,
Is that being allocated to that reserve bank you talked about?
There's a lot of conversation about whether or not we redistribute back out, and when someone leaves before 5 years is up, they have an account accrual they can't transport. So there's that flexible amount there to create that capability, and that churn is out there, and that's why Regina brought to your attention that 50% of this increase, 6.9%, because when I started here, we used to think that our churn rate was in retirement rate by somewhere around 5%, and it's moved from 5% 12 years ago to 6.9% now. There's just this, these two items that we're bringing here is about recruitment and retention. It's about trying to change the dynamics of what we thought public service was and what it presented to the workforce of today to make it as attractive. And so if I'm a millennial and I'm thinking about trying to pursue a career and wanting to get married and think somewhere down the road I want to have babies, I want to be a part of an organization where a lot of civilian firms are now offering this as part of that attractiveness. And so this whole business that we're dealing with here is the hybrid program is perceived as less friendly to the new employees coming in as our pay one and pay two. But that's also the transition of what's comparable out there in the civilian world and what's affordable as a government on our taxpayers. So there's a lot of dynamics here, and we're just, as you recognize, Mr. Moss, it's kind of a crawl, walk, run here to figure out how this works, how it's received, and to work out the details. And we would appreciate, we have some public engagement we got to do with our departments and our workforce, because some are very well entrenched into the leave bank system. But you can hear from the numbers that, Regina, it's not used. It's kind of an insurance program that we all, those of us that are in it, put in there and says, God, what happens if I do become very ill and I run out of leave? But we also watch who's using that leave and who's managing it appropriately. And we want to create a scenario where folks are building a leave balance, and there is evidence out there that we track where they always are sick on a Friday or they're sick on a Monday, and their leave balance is two days worth, and we have management responsibility here to say, is that really appropriately being used? So we've got a lot of work to do here before we bring it back to you.
Hey, Rosemary?
Well, we absolutely need to cut over maternity and paternity leave. Everybody offers that, and if we're not offering that, there's no way we can compete with the workforce, and I'm shocked we don't have it. This is something we absolutely have to do, and it's important to promote families, and we are a city who we love our families. We want families down at the resort, and this is something absolutely essential.
Other questions or comments? I say, Regina, it's just the right thing to do, and I thank you very much.
Very good.
I'm
Thank
sorry,
you.
Louis, I didn't see you.
They're entitled to 6 weeks, right? By law, right?
12 weeks under Family Medical
12
Leave Act, 12 weeks,
I don't know, I'm not sure 3 weeks is adequate. I'll be honest with you. I've just had two young ladies who, I paid them for 6 weeks each. And, they struggled coming back after 6 weeks.
They sure do.
Both of them had cesareans and so forth. But they did come back, but they were paid for 6 weeks. I'm not sure 3 weeks. No, I'll be honest.
I just recall that as it currently stands, 6 weeks is normal childbirth, and generally 8 weeks is cesarean, and we grant those, but they have to use their leave balance to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to augment, and the first 3 weeks of that is going to be paid for without them having to use their leave balance. Once they pass that, they can use their leave balance, and that's fully paid as well, but that's the leave balance that we provide them. And so we would just say, let's get out the door and let's see what the impacts are, and let's see what recruiting is.
So they're not going without pay for that period.
If they have the leave balance That is correct.
And don't forget, we also have the donation program if that's necessary.
John, you have something else to
I
add?
just say, let's watch, because I am sympathetic. As a matter of fact, I was on board where Lewis was, but I kind of worked with Regina saying, okay, let's slowly walk. Because my concern is when people, usually when they first start working, have children, children tend to get sick. So even though they have the leave they took while they're, as soon as they get their kids going to any kind of daycare, they're sick. And then they have no leave to be taking home with the kid, then they're at the lead donation programs. But we'll just have to monitor to see how it works, we'll look at the data. But that is a concern that I have, that you think you're getting something, but you're buying non-productivity on the other side, that's just.
Rosemary has something, then we'll wind it up.
My oldest daughter who works at Google, they have something really interesting for their parents of children that get sick. They send them a babysitter when they can't go to daycare. And then they get their employees at work. And so they still get the productivity. And for some, that they've found that, I'm not saying that we do this, but I thought that was a really interesting idea, that they send out a babysitter to take care of the sick child at home so their employee can come to work. And I'm not suggesting it, but it's just an interesting concept.
There is a distinct difference between being a government manager and a private industry manager, and the rules by which we have to live by here versus the,
Got it. All right. Regina, great job. Thanks for all y'all's help coming and helping Regina. We appreciate it very much. Broadband Initiative, Dave Hanson,
We're going to be fairly quick here.
you're my hero.
One-on-one. Thanks, Regina.
Liability with that, good lord. It's not that bad.
Members of council, first of all, I want to thank you all for your support of the regional broadband strategy initiative that we put together over the last year, and to be a lead city in trying to show regionalism as we move forward with our Go Virginia grant application. And what I wanted to bring back to you today is to show you exactly what we went forth with. The phase one was, as you remember, Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Chesapeake, Suffolk, and Portsmouth combined together were the 5 applicants there. We received 15 resolutions and letters of support from the 17 jurisdictions that were out there, and the other 2 were just later than when the application was in. We had 15 on the table at the time the application deadline was set, and the other 2 came across to support that. What we proposed was, from the regional Go Virginia group, an $870,000 grant request matched by $870,000 local for a 1.74 initiation. It was to prepare the final engineering design, to prepare the contracting documents for competitive, and to pursue the permitting necessary to get that done. It also was to 50-50 cost split on the pre-engineering work that you provided from your next generation CIPs at $85,000 for the Southside prep work to get our Go Virginia grant in a good condition to have a favorable review, to create that ability so that the Peninsula and the phase 2 would have that pre-engineering capability to do that as well. And then finally, to work collaboratively with a 50% grant for the governance structure. The governance structure is yet to be determined. We know that it's being involved. It exists in various communities that have moved forward their next generation network, and we need to take the best of that and figure out how we might do that. And so with that, as if we could get a green light out of our regional Go Virginia grant, then we would be able to move forward to the state Go Virginia board and see if we could pull a sizable amount more, which was an ask of $3.9 million, matched by 11.2 for the construction of 15.1 million because our pre-engineering study was able to identify that's about what it's going to take to produce a $16.8 million phase one on the south side. Today, the Regional Go Virginia committee met and considered 7 different applications. And 2 of the applications were not found to be worthy and received no funds from the regional board. The regional board had about $2.2 million available. This tallies up to somewhere shy of about 150 that they kept in their coffers to consider projects down the road. And the distribution that they elected to provide is reflected on this board. The 2 Hampton Roads, PDC unanimously supported. I know Mr. Dyer, Ms. Henley, the Vice Mayor and the Mayor were there for those. And Mr. Davenport, the newly assigned to the board, were there to assist in the vote to unanimously support these 2 from the PDC. And you can see the funding that was provided there. There was, of course, a cyber, a shipbuilding, and then a seed fund, and also received funding associated with that.
What's 757 seed fund, since the title doesn't give you any indication?
It's the Angel Fund.
It's 757 Angels.
Okay, thank you.
It's a kind of a, not an incubator, it's a Shark Tank environment. So, what I thought I would do with you today is I would take this opportunity to show you the video that we created that went in with our application. And I know that not all of you have had an opportunity to look at it, but Julie did me right, which she always does. We're going to be able to pull this up. In here.
Broadband to me means getting a coding job right out of high school.
Broadband enables us to grow our online business.
Broadband means I can do my homework anywhere.
Broadband means a robust public safety infrastructure.
Broadband means I can share dental records easily.
Broadband means a lot of things to a variety of people, but one thing is certain. It's crucial to developing Hampton Roads as a nationally connected 21st century community and international gateway.
Regional connectivity means the opportunity to compete, and we are competing with every region in the United States right now. We need to make sure that we have the infrastructure that allows our citizens and our companies to compete with all the other companies in the United States.
Leaders of Microsoft and Facebook talked about that very same thing at a recent event announcing the completion of a 4,000-mile high-speed underwater data cable named Morea that connects Bilbao, Spain and Virginia Beach.
This is part of the infrastructure of the 21st century. We actually live at a time where broadband has become a necessity of life. It has become the future of farming with precision agriculture. It is the future of healthcare with telemedicine. It is the future of education with distance learning. It is the future of job creation.
At Facebook, our mission is to bring the world closer together. And to do that, connectivity is key.
To help make broadband a reality, Chief Information Officers from all 5 Southside cities formed a regional broadband task force to create a vision for a connected Hampton Roads.
Fiber and connectivity is a must-have in the technology age that we are in, and to survive, municipalities have to band together to make sure that we make this happen. The regional broadband connectivity is strategically divided into 4 phases. Those 4 phases being the south side fiber deployment, the peninsula fiber deployment, the connection between the peninsula and the south side, and then any outlying jurisdictions after that.
The benefits of regional connectivity are numerous.
It's really important that we come together as a region for broadband for a variety of reasons, for economic development reasons, for the issues of shared services, and also for the issue of safety, of public safety.
Having abundant, affordable, ultra-high-speed internet is going to be very important when trying to attract new corporations to our area. It's also important for startup companies. We have to make sure that internet is very affordable so that all of our citizens, all the companies in this area can compete.
Without broadband, our future is limited. Having a broadband ring, it's a starting point. If we don't have that, we won't even have the opportunity to entertain discussions with small, medium, or large organizations. It is a must-have for most new companies that have anything to do with technology.
We need to make sure that when we educate our children, they go off to college, we need to make sure that they have opportunities right here at home. And that's why this is such an important project.
It's a great opportunity and a really, really important opportunity to connect all of the higher education institutions together with K-12 and all public safety institutions. It will facilitate research across the world. It will help with talent development across the region to address the needs for high-speed internet access to all of the educational institutions as well as the businesses in our service area.
Support for this project is region-wide.
The Hampton Roads Planning District Commission is made up of 17 localities and 1.7 million people who comprise the metropolitan area. I am pleased that all 17 localities supported this initiative. I am excited that all of our jurisdictions wholeheartedly support this, and we are going to work together with our neighboring communities and make sure that this important initiative is supported.
The 21st century economic transformation is well underway. Over a year ago, the CAOs of the 17 jurisdictions came together and took a look at what's going on across the nation. We identified a handful of regions that were the progressive regions in America that had already moved rapidly forward, combining their resources as jurisdictions and partnering with the academic institutions to create the infrastructure of the 21st century. That infrastructure is broadband. It's more than just the internet. It's the bandwidth necessary to market, to transfer data and big data at that, to do research, to provide even small companies the ability to connect to accountants so that they can do their business and to be able to be competitive in what is transforming into an e-commerce society. We put together the CIO organization so that they would start to look at this, so that they could come together collectively to be able to work through the technologies as well as the engineering to be able to provide that. I am very pleased today to announce that we've got our foot in the door, moving forward to state competition to look at this. We have some work to do on our application so that it comes across even more critical to the state that they need to invest in their regions to provide this infrastructure. I'll close by saying that it is not our intent to create internet service providers out of our local jurisdictions. It is our intent to create the infrastructure, the utility of the 21st century, just as water and electricity was to manufacturing in the day. Broadband is that utility for the future commerce transformation that the world is undertaking as we sit here today. And at the same time, to provide the infrastructure so that a middle mile capability exists for private companies to be able to step in and utilize our assets to be able to provide that digital divide solution that happens not only in the neighborhoods and houses for homework, but for small businesses, and to enable councils like yourself to take on initiatives like biomedical to provide those 10 and 20G connections that allow them to develop that industry. So I appreciate
questions of Dave.
Observation. I know, just something to watch. I know that Microsoft is doing, or Bill Gates is doing, the $80 million smart community outside of Phoenix. And Google's doing, I forget how many $100 million in Toronto. So those might be places just to watch, just to see from best practices what they do. But those are two big places where corporate world has placed a bet just for prototyping applications.
Well, Go ahead, Bill.
I'd just like to thank Dave Hansen and his staff, Pedro Wallace and Daryl Riddick, for really diving into this. And this is such an important project for our entire region. This will make us one of the top 20 regions in the United States in terms of our network capabilities, which I think is going to have a cumulative effect when we're trying to attract a new industry to this area. And so I'm very excited about it. I'd just like to thank Dave Hansen. Dave has really gone to work on this and has become an expert on the subject matter. And so I'm very grateful for that. And just really look forward to moving forward with this project.
One thing I would add, we started at 130 when the money was distributed this morning. And I thought everyone was going to well, I didn't even want to look at their faces because it didn't, it was a huge disappointment. But a couple of comments that were made is all the projects that were approved were kind of going to be dependent on broadband. And I mean, the group picked that up. And also, there was a comment made that we were trying to compete with the private sector. And I could not correct that fast enough. That is not the intent at all. But I think we need to be aware of those issues out there so that we can correct them. But we were able to get enough support to get another $400,000 to get it up to 530. So we did respectable, but we still have work to do to go to the state. Any other things, folks?
And I'd like to thank the mayor for stepping up big time and making sure that this project got on the right footing.
Happy to do it, buddy. That's what a mayor does. John?
Mayor, the staff has been working with how to honor Jim Ricketts over the last several months. And I've prepared, I'm not going to be here next week, but I've prepared a resolution I'm going to pass out that would actually name the ballroom at the convention center for
That's
Jim.
very nice.
And,
very nice.
And so I'm going to ask that be put on the agenda for next week. And
Very nice of you.
get support of the council.
That's really nice.
Very good. Any other things?
I just let the council know that the governor has appointed me to the Broadband Advisory Council.
And thank you. Congratulations on that. Any other questions or comments? We'll adjourn. Thank you.